John Bennett ran a charity called New Era Philanthropy Foundation in Philadelphia. And matching contributions is not a foreign concept. If you worked at, say, Chrysler and you wanted to give donations to University of Michigan, Chrysler would match that. And a lot of corporations did that with charities. They would match their employees' contribution. Bennett took that concept and said, well, I have a wealthy individual who will match your contributions to a university or a charity. But to pay our overhead, we want you to send the money to us, and then after 6 months, we'll match it, and we'll invest the money in treasuries, and the interest will pay our overhead. And, this came to Spring Arbor College, and I heard about it, and we sent them. We got donations of $300,000, and we sent it to New Era with a promise that we'll get 600 back. Now, to me, that was within 6 months, you double your money. And to me, it was just Ponzi scheme right from the beginning. And they got the money back, and they called me in and waved the check and say, you see it all? I said, they are going to ask you for $1 million now, because they need the 600 back, because that's what you do. And they said, oh, well, I'm silly, and I must stick to what I do in the classroom. And I was just very concerned, and I made 200 plus phone calls to various people and the Wall Street Journal. Nobody took me seriously. And I wrote letters to the Attorney General and the IRS and even the AICPA. You got a CPA who's, involved in this because he's auditing the financial statements. I tried to get our college CPAs, but nobody wanted to take me serious. But anyway, eventually, and the IRS wouldn't give me the financial statements. And then I insisted, and then they said, well, I can drive to Ann Arbor and look at it. And I said, I put a $75 check in the letter, and I said, if it's a matter of cost, photocopy it and send it. And that worked, because they sent it to me. And I had called the SEC, and they said, oh, we don't deal with not-for-profits. So, but when I got the financial statements, in the footnote, it's the 990. It looks just like a tax return, and it's filed with the IRS, but not-for-profits don't pay tax. But on the balance sheet, the footnote said they owned Chrysler and Ford stock. And I thought, oh, somebody donated the stock and said, sell it and match it. So I called up the SEC, and I said, he's dealing with securities across state lines. And the SEC guy said to me, Albert, you've got me. I've got to do something now. And that was a big help. But so you get the financial statements, and you have about 50 pages or more with about 50 entries per page of Harvard University, Yale, Princeton, John Whitehead Foundation, Lawrence Rockefeller, the CEO of Procter Gamble, Pepper, William Kanaga, who was the chairman of the AICPA. I mean, you got these names and these institutions, Nature Conservancy, and, it kind of shocks you a bit, because you say, well, what do they know that I don't know? I mean, why do I think it's so obvious? But then as an accountant, you look at the balance sheet, pretty simple. If he's taking $20 million, because it was like $40 million. So if he's got $20 million now holding it for 6 months, he should have the $20 million invested in treasuries on the one side of the balance sheet, and he should have a liability of $20 million. So there were no liabilities. But if you're running a Ponzi scheme, you're basically taking the money and paying left, robbing Paul to pay Peter. And then, obviously, if you have $20 million on hand and you invest it in treasuries, you'll have a lot of interest income. And his overheads were maybe $500,000 a year, and he said he uses the interest to pay his overheads. So I figured he should have about $600,000 in interest income, but he had $33,000 in income, which again confirms my notion, if the left hand's paying the right hand. So that eventually got the Wall Street Journal interested. That's when the guy said, okay, let me go and interview Bennett. And he interviewed Bennett. And by that time, and it was kind of funny because I also contacted the Prudential because I'd heard that I'd insisted that Spring Arbor College put their money in an escrow account. And Bennett said to the president, yes, we put it in an escrow account and you can check it. This is the number. And I happened to get hold of the number. So I called the number and it was Kenosha, Wisconsin. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? Why is the money in Kenosha, Wisconsin? So then I contacted the legal department at Prudential. And, of course, now the SEC was involved. And so when Stecklow, what's his first name again? When he got to Philly to interview Jack Bennett, Steve Stecklow, when he got there, he said, and I said to him, Steve, he's going to tell you nobody lost any money. And he said, I got out of the elevator and there was the manager and he said, what's going on here? We have the SEC here today. We have some lawyers here. We've got Prudential here. And I'd drawn him a little map and I said, I put Niera in the center and then I put all the people I've contacted. And I said, you see, I've contacted all these people because if only 3 or 4 of them respond, he's going to have trouble to fend them off. Because he had already had an inquiry from the IRS, but he sort of fobbed that off and the IRS just said, okay, we've closed the inquiry, which he then used in his marketing material that we've been audited and we've given a clear bill of health. We were given a clear bill of health, which was not the truth. But anyway, so it worked out exactly as I envisaged, because when he got there, it was this chaos. And he said, but the manager looked at me and said, nobody's lost money. And he said, Albert, when you said that, I just knew you were right. And of course, Bennett got on a train and went to Washington to use his influence there to try and stop the Wall Street Journal from publishing it. But his contacts there said, sorry, we can't stop the Wall Street Journal. And he called me this Sunday afternoon. He said, Albert, it's going to be in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow morning. And the Wall Street Journal broke the story. And at 7 o'clock, the phone rang, and it was a charity in the UK who said, you saved us tremendous embarrassment. We have a royalty on our board. And we sent him a check for £350,000 on Friday. But because we got the Wall Street Journal before the banks opened, we were able to stop payment on it. And we just want to thank you. And from then on, the phone just rang.